All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of The Context. I am super excited for today's show. We've got two amazing speakers. We have lots of exciting news to share on our little MCP live stream, YouTube channel, whatever it is. It's been a busy week. First of all, I want to announce we just set up and published the dates for the next MCP Dev Summit. So we are going to London. We're going to be in London on the 2nd of October for a fantastic day. We've got 2 tracks. We've got some awesome speakers. The call for papers is open, so we have lots of room to add interesting talks. What are you doing with MCP? What are the best tips for building awesome MCP? What's your really cool startup that's doing something to secure MCPs doing? What can you teach people? What can you show? If you haven't seen the talks we had last time, they were incredible. We're going to have a number of the steering committee presenting again. We've got a whole bunch of awesome speakers coming from Anthropic who are going to share the direction MCP's going. I am so excited about this. It's going to be bigger. Last time we were 300 people. I think we've got room to almost double for London. So hopefully we'll see an awesome turnout for a really, really fun day driving forward this amazing new community in London. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. I think both of our speakers today would be fantastic speakers at this event because they're doing really, really interesting things. And that's really been the whole idea of the context is we are trying to bring together people doing cool stuff with MCP to share what they're doing. So it's a little less tips and tricks, a little bit more, here's the future. This is what, the technology you're going to be interested in using. And we've had an amazing set of talks. You can find them all here on our YouTube channel. We have, if you want to scan the QR code, you can get to those talks and spend 20 minutes. Every week we have 1 or 2 guest speakers. We then kind of break out their talks into these shorter bits so you can go find the really good stuff without listening to all of me blathering. And it should be a lot of fun. Our next couple of weeks look really exciting as well. I'll talk a little bit more about today's in just a second, but next week we've got presentations on kind of an enterprise bent. This Natoma Labs team has some sort of internal enterprise hosted MCP solution. And then there's a whole bit on how to monetize your MCP. So you build something cool, people are using it, you want them to pay you for the coding and work you've done. Let's see if it's possible. And then the week after that, we've got one person that's confirmed and another we're waiting on approval from their company to speak. But it's the first talk is already really cool. It's with the Apollo GraphQL people, and it's all about GraphQL and MCP and what you can do with those things together. So should be an interesting talk then as well. All right, so as always, Darren and I host this with a real goal to keep it moving fast. We have, we try to keep these talks to less than 20 minutes, and we're pretty brutal about that. So we'll push pretty hard to keep you guys on track. Luckily, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with that today. Stephen and Felix are going to be mostly demoing and showing us stuff, which is always way better than slides. As we have to say, show, not tell. And these are our talks. So our first talk today is with Felix Rieseberg. Rieseberg. How do you pronounce it correctly? I lived in Germany for a while, and it would be Rieseberg, I think.
It's a funny question. I've been in the Silicon Valley for like 13 years now, and I never really figured out how I really want people to pronounce it. Rieseberg works fine, but I'll take anything.
Yeah.
It's really
how would your mom say it? It's German. Like, what would you say?
Rieseberg, which is difficult to translate. There's like a lot of tones.
Berg is mountain. Is Riese not like vacation? Oh, that's Riese. Riese is
yeah. It's different. It's like I think like the direct translation would be like big mountain, which is really funny because it's an area in Germany with like nothing but like the tiniest hill.
Where is it? Where in Germany are you from?
I'm from the west, like sort of very close to Amsterdam, about 3 hours from Paris, like right at the border.
Like Aachen area? That area, like near Aachen?
Yeah, like around there, exactly. Yeah.
That's a beautiful area. I love it. Great wine too. Cool place to be from. I lived in Stuttgart for a long time, like 8 years between Stuttgart.
Oh wow, that's cool. Like for automotive?
What's that?
For automotive, were you there for the car company?
No, I was a kid. My father was a contractor to the U.S. Army, and I worked there.
Oh, cool.
I went to gymnasium for a couple of years, so I could speak some German, but it's kind of falling away. The problem is everybody in Germany speaks like perfect English. When I go there, I'm like, I don't really need to learn my German again.
Yeah, don't bother with it. It's a difficult, hard language, right?
It's good though. Great food, great people. I love Germany. Stephen is joining us from Nigeria, right? Are you near Lagos? Is that right, Stephen?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Global episode today. And Stephen, you're going to be talking to us about MicroVMs. I know this is an area Darren sort of was super excited to have you on the podcast to get into. So really excited to have you with us today as well.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get started. Felix, it's been a crazy, I guess every month feels crazy from Anthropic these days. There's so much cool shit you guys are doing. But I'm super excited to hear about, obviously, the work on desktop extensions. We were gushing over it here on the podcast 3 weeks ago. But also the announcement just this week about the sort of local MCP directory and what you guys are doing there. So let me turn the stage over to you, and we'd love to hear more about what you're working on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty excited about it too. So I joined Anthropic fairly recently, like maybe 2 months ago. And my actual mandate is to take over Claude for macOS and Windows. So I'm going to build a new team to really take over the desktop apps and really think what Claude can do on your computer. And this is really the project that I've been like obsessed with even before I joined Anthropic. Like sometimes you have these things that you like join companies for because you feel like someone needs to build this. And this is sort of like the thing where I joined the company within hours. I cornered people. I was like, I have this idea. We need to build this thing. And this thing specifically is I'm such a big fan of like computing locally, right? Like I've been a desktop developer for like 14, 15 years. I've always really thought about the ability to like empower people on their computers and especially empower developers on their computer, right? Like I've been working in open source and Electron and just cross-platform development for many years. And I think MCP, especially local MCP, has this unique opportunity to allow developers out there to connect all of their apps and data and like users' apps and data to LLMs. And the one thing I think we were really missing was to make that quite portable and easy to install. So we have so many amazing MCP servers out there, but if I build one, it still seems like people are sort of sharing Git repos with each other and like a set of installation instructions and like, okay, you clone this repo, then you install the dependencies here, and then you got to have like these 5 dependencies installed, like to run the scripts. And I think we can really do better. Like at the beginning of time, that's also how you hacked on Visual Studio Code or how you hacked on your browser with like browser extensions. And my feeling really was, okay, we gotta package these MCP servers up. Like I should be able to send you just a file. You double click that file, and now you have a local MCP server. And that is pretty much what we built. So I have 2 demos for you. The first one I'm going to show is I'm going to show you what the user experience is like and sort of what would an end user who's not a developer see. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about how you would actually develop this. Like, does that sound good? Should we?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect flow.
Okay, cool. So let's start with the user experience. This is the thing that launched this week. So this is Claude, but maybe one thing I should say before we get started here is that this entire desktop extensions concept is like on purpose extremely open source. And Claude is just one implementation, but you're not really seeing anything that you couldn't add to any other LLM or model application, which is quite on purpose. And I think in spirit with both how MCP carries itself, but also how Anthropic thinks about open source in the ecosystem. But without further ado, so we have a directory, you already mentioned that. We're splitting up the directory into 2 separate areas. The first one is web. To developers, we can just call these remote MCP. And then we have desktop extensions, which to developers we can just call local MCP. And you might be wondering why we're not straight up calling this MCP. We thought about the terminology here quite a bit. And I personally have this belief, and I think it's still a little bit to be tested, but I personally have this belief that end users, as in like real customers, the ones that are supposed to use what all of the people on this call and like everyone is listening to me right now, right? Like we're all developers. But end users don't care if AirPlay uses Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And they don't care that when they're talking to Google that it's like TCP/IP, right? Like Chrome is not the TCP/IP protocol inspector. It's a browser. So we're calling them connectors to like make it more clear what these things do. But what you're looking at here right now is our currently directory of like 20 or so extensions. And these are just package.mcp servers. So you can see that when I click on this, it tells me a little bit about the Figma dev mode. It tells me that this thing is installed. And if I maybe install another one here for fun, like the file system one, I can just hit this install button. It's going to ask me if I want to install it. And we're just doing things for you. We're just like grabbing the MCP server for you. We're unzipping it locally. We're putting it in a folder. There's a little bit of configuration. If any of you have used the MCP server for the file system before, normally you're supposed to add this as an argument to your node process. Unnecessary for normal users. We can just like add a directory manually. We can just say, okay, cool, we're just gonna add my desktop here, save, and then we're done. And I can then enable this extension server, and now it's running. And a few more things that are cool here. As an end user, you don't need to have Node.js installed. We're just running Node.js for you. You don't need to worry about the dependency management. You don't need to worry about like, okay, you got to run npx with the following arguments. And if you run the wrong arguments and you escape certain paths wrong, we manage all of that for you. And yeah, like the Figma dev mode one is very similar, right? Like if we go into the developer mode here and we maybe look at a little bit of this, we can see that in my actual application directory, these are just normal servers, right? Like this is the Figma dev mode server with node modules and like a manifest and package.json and everything else that comes with it. But an end user doesn't really care about that. And there's a few other things that are interesting about this for this configuration. We're doing some things that I think are quite important to me as a desktop developer. A lot of these MCP servers involve sensitive data, for instance, API keys. And I think today, in the way we've been developing for a long time, they just exist on disk in like a raw file. And that feels bad to me. And I think one thing we can do as implementers of these desktop apps, if you do this here, we encrypt them using your operating system secret crypt. So like DP API on Windows, or the classic macOS keychain on macOS, right? Where we just like keep your secrets somewhat safe. And we can do more things here. We can like do code signing for these. So I can like tell you the same way when you go to https://google.com, you have this trust. This is really from Google and wasn't modified by someone else. We can do the same code signing with these extensions, sort of cryptographically verify that they're actually from Figma, not from anyone else. And we can auto update these extensions. So we can sort of do all the things that I think you would expect from a quote unquote modern app store, right? Without having to worry about any of the details. The goal here really is to make this like very easy for users.
As the non-developer here, I mean, this is, MCP has been, it's been work for me. I've had to go and really, really build out a lot of skills that I didn't have beforehand, because just to get MCPs working and just to figure out how to consume them all. So I've been super excited about this because it just feels like the most obvious next step is that this stuff should be at your fingertips, easy to deploy, easy to consume, and this is a big. I think this is a big jump forward, and it's something that is going to be the default way that we interact with LLMs as typical users.
Yeah, I totally agree. It should just be so easy, right? Like one of the extensions that I'm more excited about is the one from Figma, where you can just connect your, in our case, Claude to Figma, and you can ask Claude to like please set up like design various things from Figma for you. This works really well. Maybe I'm gonna show you real quick the end result here, but I have this like Figma design, and I can just copy this link, and then we can do this again. Like we can watch this. I can say, hey, can you turn this into HTML, please? And there's nothing fundamentally new here for anyone on this call has like worked with MCP for quite a while. So what you're watching here are just tool calls with MCP. None of that is particularly new. But the thing that's really exciting to me is that designers can now do this without having to worry about whether or not they have NPM or Node or any of the tools that you would otherwise expect a developer to have. And certainly a designer who's like working in Figma now doesn't have to worry about Git or Git clone and then like, running the wrong Node version and like NPX doesn't work. This just works out of the box.
It's crazy. This just the playing field too, in terms of people who would otherwise just not be able to get here. I mean, it's really exciting. I mean, I just think about, I was running, 500-600 person sales organizations, and it's shocking how many people, if they knew how to do this, they understand what they want. It's just the ability to bring together all the packaging and all the stuff so that they can actually, gather the information, to put it into some repeatable process or some automation. And now that that knowledge gap is like shrinking.
Yeah, totally. And as an enterprise too, like one thing I've been hearing a lot from people is they want to pre-install extensions. They want to have a bit more tight control over what kind of extensions people install.
Yeah.
They don't really want to get, like if you're a security conscious enterprise, you don't really want to teach your users that they should just git clone random dependencies and install them, right? Like that's maybe for developers, but and what you can do as an enterprise here, even with your in-house extensions, because they just exist on file, right? Like if you put them into this folder, you're good. You can pre-install extensions with your normal fleet management, like even the in-house ones. So then when users open up their machine, they get their laptop on their first day, all of the right MCP servers are already there. And as an enterprise, you can make it very easy for, one example I really liked was a biolab that is using like an internal MCP server to connect it to an internal genome database. And they don't have to teach any of the researchers how to do any of that. It just works, right? They just open up the laptop and it's there. But should we talk about the developer stuff? Because I think that's actually more exciting than what you've been seeing so far.
I want one question, but yeah, it starts getting to the developer side because developers will first start asking about what's the security barrier on all of this? How safe is this? What, all of those things. And so I don't know if that's something you want to talk about now, or there's something you're going to get into.
If you want to, we can talk about it now. I can give you a little bit of my philosophy about this that I think has worked, and also like my philosophy in terms of what we know works. So from my point of view, local MCP servers, there we go. That actually looks not great, but I think that's just mobile mode. This is pretty good. By the way, this only doesn't work. The image is only missing because we don't allow you to load images. But if we save this, we're just gonna put it here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about security. I think security is also like something that's very dear and close to my heart. So local MCP servers really are just programs, right? They're just processes you run on your machine. And I'm suspicious of anyone who's ever claimed that they can completely secure a binary running on your machine. It's a little easier with Python or JavaScript because we can actually read the code and can have a little bit of trust. But generally speaking, I think we've learned from Chrome extensions, Visual Studio Code extensions, and even from Apple and Windows that it's much more important that you trust the developer than that you trust the actual code. If I get code from Google, I feel a lot better about that than if I get code from shadywebsite.com. So I think our approach here is going to be, at least in the short term, mimic really closely what we're doing on macOS and Windows, where code signing doesn't verify that the application is safe itself. Of course, there's like a little bit of rudimentary checking you can do, and we will do that. But what we really want to teach people is that they should trust the author. And that's what macOS does, right? Like if you download an application, macOS doesn't actually check that the application is safe. It doesn't do that. What macOS does is it checks that the application is really code signed, the same way that a browser verifies that HTTPS www.google.com is from Google. And if it can't verify their trust chain, if that developer has not signed the application with something that goes up the trust root chain, then it blocks the execution. And from a security point of view, what I would recommend for the community going forward is like a little to be determined whether or not that's the right approach. But I think we should take lessons from browser extensions, from Visual Studio Code extensions, and also just from programs and operating systems, and try to apply the same lessons to local MCP servers.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable approach. So it's kind of like is the process right now of getting, getting like the developer, once they develop their connector, is getting it into the Claude app that's going through a code signing process. So that's, you need a signing key, and that's kind of what you guys are enforcing. So it's the trust is really starting first with Anthropic or Claude, and then you guys validate that forward.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, I think it was important to me that you don't necessarily need us. It's important to me that like Anthropic doesn't have to be the man in the middle. You should be able to run local MCP servers with, I think, trust, even if you're building your own local MCP servers. And what we're using here is we're using classic PKCS7. Actually, we're moving to PKCS11 certificates. And any code signing provider, be that DigiCert or AWS, or these days it's actually Microsoft itself, if you have a private key, you can sign all of these TXT extensions. And we will verify that signature as we load the extension. And if it doesn't verify, we're actually going to warn you. And we will by default block the installation. Right now, you can install by default unsigned extensions, just because I think we have to educate the community a little bit about the value of code signing. But as an enterprise, there's already a setting in Claude where you can say, okay, I only want users to be able to install signed extensions. And you can get a certificate from anyone. If you want to, as an enterprise, you can even install a root certificate on your machine, so you don't need to pay someone money, right? You can just say, okay, we want to be able to sign our own extensions. But you sort of do this the same way that you would manage which root certificates your machine trusts for actual applications or for websites. So it like verifies it up the entire root chain.
Yeah, because that was one of the technical questions I had was, like when you go to a website, you get a certificate for that domain, so then you know, okay, well, the website the certificate says matches the website. So if you're loading it, from disk, what is that like? How do you verify like the identity of that certificate? Does it somehow track back to DNS somehow? You're actually going to like you can say, oh, this actually comes from Google because it's somehow tracks back to google.com.
It's a good question. So the way this works is, and everyone sort of has their own system, we write the certificate chain at the end of the zip file. So we're going to talk in a little bit about what the extensions look like. They're just zip files. So the last couple of bytes are the certificate. Chrome extensions put the certificate at the beginning of the zip file. Visual Studio Code extensions, I think, also put them in at the end. But it works fundamentally the same way that code signing works, where the certificate, the public key is embedded into the binary itself. And then as you boot it up, the operating system goes, okay, does this actually verify using my root certificates that I have here? Like, has this certificate been published by someone I trust? And then it sort of goes up the entire chain locally on your machine. And you as an enterprise can configure what should be trusted and what shouldn't be trusted.
Yeah, I think there's still like my mind. Well, whatever. I'm just getting too technical probably at this point. Is like the because it's like you go, oh, it's signed by VeriSign. Well, no, is VeriSign still really a thing? But anyway, so it's signed by VeriSign, but it doesn't matter that it's signed by VeriSign. It's also like from this domain. So there's always a secondary, like the subject name or the common name of like, how do you know that this is really who they say they are?
I see what you're asking.
Yeah, so it's like, because browsers just implicitly do it for you, because when you type in the URL, they just go, oh, well, the URL has to match, right? But like, I'm not getting it from a URL. So then the question is like, when you show the identity like of the certificate, do you trust that identity? And is it like how much beyond just the words you're reading? So I don't know what the answer, like how to do these things. But it was just really funny that you mentioned that you put the certificates at the end, because when I first saw this format, the first thing I thought of, which was really funny, was this is my Java background, was I'm like, oh, it reminds me of a jar, because a jar file for Java is just a zip file. But there's one unique thing about a jar file is they put the manifest file as the very first file in the beginning. So it's like, this is just basically a zip file, but the one special thing is there's a certificate at the very end.
Exactly. Yeah. We can talk more about like how the certificates work within DNS and how they work here. But I think
we should probably get into the other stuff. That's good. Super technical, but it's nice to hear. I think that's a reason, because this is something I've struggled with a lot of, like, also from a security perspective, is like sandboxing versus trust. So like you're kind of going more towards the trust approach, which I think is a very pragmatic, reasonable thing, which we know pretty much scales. And like, I think when you get the diehard security people, they're like, no, everything has to be sandboxed. And so, that's kind of like, well, maybe something can be added later or whatever. But I think the trust model is the one that, it's like just the most pragmatic thing, where like that's the thing that seems to like just initially kind of work well. And it's like, well, yeah,
always where it starts. It always starts there. And there's nothing that starts with sandboxing hardly. It always starts with trust, and then over time, certain people invest in that next layer of sort of running everything on its own little world.
Yeah, and I
developer
all about sandboxing.
I definitely want to get into sort of Felix, what developers should take away from this, how they can submit to the directory, how can they get involved?
Oh man, I'm so happy you asked. So let's first briefly think about, you have an MCP server, how do you make an extension? What does that look like, right?
Yeah.
So what I brought you is something I'm sure many of you have seen before. It's the weather service TypeScript. It's the default extension. Sorry, it's the default MCP server that we've all worked with quite a bit. And if you want to turn this MCP server into an extension, what we really got to do is we got to package it up. And we already talked about the fact that extensions are just zip files. So we basically just take everything in this folder and zip it up. And then we have to describe this extension to an implementing application, in our case, Claude. So that Claude knows what this is, like who is it from, what does it do, what should we call this thing, which version does it have? And we built a utility for this. It's called DXT, unsurprising. So you can install this utility, and then you have it. And then there's two commands you can run. The first one is DXT init. And if you just run this command, it's going to give you a long questionnaire, ask you about everything it wants to know, give you ample opportunities to add a support homepage and a long description and explain the tools. You can also do the quick thing and just run it with --yes, in which case it uses sort of the right default values. And what it does here is it creates a manifest.json. And you already talked about jar files, but I think a manifest.json is something that works really well for Chrome extensions, for Visual Studio Code extensions. It's like the concept of, I have a bunch of stuff here. Please explain to someone who's supposed to use this what this is about. And there's a number of fields. The entire spec for this is public, it's open source. I'm going to show the GitHub repo in a little bit. But the key point here is that it contains information about the server, and it also contains the server configuration. How should the implementer run this? And there's a little bit of interesting stuff here that makes this easier for developers, which is variable substitution. So I can also write down what kind of configuration values I want to grab from the user and then substitute them in my config. So we have this manifest, and now I can run dxtpack, and that gives me a manifest file. Sorry, it gives me a DXT file. It's right here. And we can open this up in Finder, and I can just say open with Claude. Oh God, I have too many. As the Claude developer, I have too many of them. So we're just gonna do this. We're just gonna drag this onto Claude down here, and it's gonna pop up. Hey, do you want to install this? And we already talked a little bit about trust, right? Like this one is currently unsigned, but I can hit the install button. It's gonna ask me if I want to do it, and now it's installed. That's all there was to it. Like you didn't have to do anything else, and now it's in here. And I think one thing I'm personally pretty excited about is the opportunity to configure things fairly easily, so you don't have to worry too much about how configuration should work, and also do platform overrides.
When I looked at the manifest, because I was going through the spec, I really appreciate it because you can tell that I like it when a specification comes out of an actual implementation, and you can really tell you're addressing pragmatic issues of how you're really going to put this into a UI and display it. And so I really appreciated the configurability aspect of how you can configure it and put in the questions, and it's a directory or whatever. It's quite nice. It was a really good user experience at the end of the day.
Thank you. I will say it's really early days, right? We versioned the 0.1 for two reasons. One is we're probably going to get some things wrong. The first version of anything I ever released was not perfect. The first version of MCP was not perfect. So we already encountered some errors where we're like, ooh, there's maybe things we should do a little differently. As an example, I already talked about user config. I talked to the Puppeteer people. This is how you do the user config. There are some things we maybe got wrong about this, where some MCP servers need to be configured in such a way that we can't model well. Platform overrides work for operating systems, but not for architectures. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is if this format turns out to be actually quite successful, and I think early days look really good. I'm so excited with the amount of extensions I see out there. So it seems like there's a decent appetite for this. If this format of a manifest.json seems useful, I suspect that we will increasingly move this into the server.json within the steering committee and model context protocol. And then we sort of like piece by piece dissolve the manifest.json into the server.json that the model context protocol community is currently working on. And
and that's I think that's totally the right approach, because I'm glad to hear you're thinking that way, because it is this thing where it's like, if you take from a pragmatic look, I've already implemented this, and this does have kind of like, it just doesn't have the remote aspects. But I was kind of curious how you guys are doing the remote aspect. But anyways, but the remote's pretty easy. It's just a URL for the most part. But yeah, so that idea of basically just moving this, because you already have everything. It's really nice, because I see a very synergy between like, well, what the like kind of the registry working group is doing and stuff. It's like, how do you get these two things together?
Absolutely, totally right. Like, and everyone working on the registry has been super nice. We're talking about it. I have a decent amount of to-dos to like actually inform them about what we need to change about server.json, so that an app like Claude could easily live off just the server.json.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But I do think my dream for this entire format is that DXT becomes just a file format, and the manifest.json sort of disappears into the server.json. I think it's yet to be determined which pieces we like and need to move over, which ones we don't like and maybe need to change before it moves into the model context protocol. And I think doing it sort of on the side was a nice opportunity to first prove out the concept, make sure we get some of the basics right before we move it into the, I think at this point, like widely adopted model context protocol, where I think the quality bar should be a little higher. I think we're at the point where I'm quite confident that something like this is necessary and good, like the idea of packaging up local MCP servers. Some parts about the manifest.json I really like, and they're working really well. Some parts a little unsure of, like something that I'm still really split on is what should we do about Python?
I was going to ask, because Python, I unfortunately started with Python with this, and it was super bumpy. Yeah.
Like the thing that's really tricky is that Python by design is not super portable. I think UV is trying to make that a little bit better, but it's still very hard. So it sends you down this path of, for Node.js, it's pretty easy to say, okay, this should just be standalone. Like it should just run everywhere. And that's something we've done quite a bit with a number of applications, right? Like anyone who's running Visual Studio Code or Figma or whatever, you're all running like a portable version of Node.js through Electron. And as the Electron developer, I have a lot of experience in getting that to work. And I think Python has a lot of very fundamental assumptions where it's really meant to be this one binary that runs on a computer and can like put files anywhere. So I'm still a little unsure where we're going to take this. Like, should we run a post install step? Like, should we ship UV maybe for people?
Yeah, I mean, because I've spent a little bit of time doing this or whatever, and I kind of feel like with MCP, it's kind of like this net new thing wherever it's greenfield. People are writing things now, and most MCP servers are really just shim layers. They tend to be a little lighter than they're talking to something else. That I would like what I'd love to see is just say just standardize on UV right now. Like just start with UV. That's really the only way to do it. Because beyond, if you just try to do plain old Python, you're right. There's just too much stuff, and so UV has really put a lot of sanity around it, and it's very compatible with it. So I don't know. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think I sort of agree with you. There's a lot of things we still need to work through. Like the security aspect, a little, like any kind of post-install step is always a little scary, right?
Yeah.
That's always like, ooh, how do you... Like, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to make this a lot better, especially for Python. I also think that Python, some of the most interesting applications I've seen were written in Python. Like one of the default examples we had as we were developing this was like a Game Boy extension where you can just watch Claude play Game Boy.
Yeah.
Not super useful, doesn't make your work life in any way better, but it's like cool to see, right? You can just like send someone an extension, they double click it, and now Claude is playing a Game Boy game. But that kind of interesting stuff happens a lot in Python. And a lot of the researchers out there working in biolabs code in Python. And I do want to make that very, very easy. I do want them to be able to send this to their colleagues without saying, oh, are you running Python 3.12 or 13? And where is it installed? Is it called Python or Python 3? I want to cut out all of these troubles. I also understand that when security people talk to me and I tell them, ooh, and then once you double click this file, we're going to download and run random code, that they're going to have an aneurysm with me, right? I understand that. But I think as a community, we'll find the right thing.
Yeah.
Guys, I just want to be conscious of time. We're at about 40 minutes.
Oh, shoot. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
when you let us.
So we should probably, anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just say one last thing, which is like, if you go to anthropic.com/engineering, at the very top there, you should see desktop extensions. If you are building a cool MCP server, both local or remote, we now have a directory, send it to us. We would like to feature it. That's all I'm going to say.
And how do they send it to you? What's the process?
So we have an interest form at the very bottom. So you sort of have to like fight your way through this entire thing. It's very early days. But there's an interest form where we ask you at the top, do you want this for local MCP servers or remote MCP servers? You fill this out. It's not like it ends up in like a big heartless machine. All of these emails go straight to me. We'll look at all of them, and I would love to put them in Claude.
Yeah, you can sell this.
Okay, really ask yourself: is this cool or is it the same thing as everyone's? It better be cool. Everyone's sending him a whole bunch of crap. Okay,
everyone is working on cool things.
One or two cool things from our audience. Thank you, people. Felix, thanks so much for coming on, man. Super exciting, great work. Love how open everything is and how this can be used not just in the cloud universe, but I think everything you've shown us, app developers, people building cool MCP enterprise product, whatever, there's stuff to be taken from here that could standardize and make the lives of MCP developers more consistent when they move from customer to customer, depending on what platform that user, whether they're using Goose or they're using Claude or they're using VS Code or whatever they're using as the clients. This is great stuff. So thank you for joining us. It's awesome.
I really appreciate Anthropic being so open and open source friendly with MCP, with this desktop, all these specifications and stuff. It's great, and you can see how quickly it's just getting picked up. So.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. All right. Wow, that was great. I have to say, our rule about cutting shit off at 20 minutes, we didn't do that this week.
I know.
It sucked.
I totally lost track of time. But
well, Steven, we still have 20 minutes, so we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And you've got an awesome talk that I know we're excited to hear about MicroVMs and for what this can do. So I am going to. You want to share your desktop, and I'll pull you up.
And this is I just want to give it I have this I absolutely love any virtualization technology. That's kind of I've been fooling with virtualization for forever, for decades or whatever. And I was so blown away when I saw this project of just how well packaged, because this stuff is complicated. This VM crap, there's a lot of amazing stuff going on under the hood, but so how cleanly this was put together was very impressive. And anyways, sorry. Really
Thanks.
The floor is yours. We're super excited to hear about it.
I really appreciate it. I believe I'm sharing already.
You are sharing, yeah.
Okay. So my name is Steven Akinyemi, and I'm pretty excited to be here. I was going to talk about so I want to talk about MicroVMs today and why we have to move on from containers and why containers are not adequate for the things that we're using AI agents for. First, my background. So I attended University of Lagos and I studied social sciences. But while there, I just wasn't very interested in social science halfway through my course, and I decided programming made more sense, and I was more interested in making computers do stuff. So after I left school, I decided to just focus on programming career. And not long after that, I was delving into low-level stuff, building compilers. I was really interested in programming languages. I was actually working on a programming language. And at some point, I realized I discovered WebAssembly through like the programming language community, because it's supposed to be this target for other programming languages to compile to. And as you can imagine, WebAssembly has sandboxing properties, which actually led me into this whole sandboxing space. So I was one of the early contributors to the WASMA WebAssembly runtime. And yeah, that's gaining huge interest in the crypto Web3 space right now. Eventually, I had to work on, I had to deal with untrusted user code. And this was for a no-code platform. And I was using V8 Isolate for that. And at some point, I realized like this WebAssembly and V8 Isolate all have their issues. Specifically, they cannot run legacy software. You cannot run just any Linux software on them. And that got me into MicroVMs last year. So yeah, I'm in MicroVMs because you can pretty much run any stuff, and it has hardware level isolation. Yeah, so that's my background, and I just want to talk about AI agents in general. And you might ask, what are even AI agents? I know a lot of the people here already know what AI agents are about, but I tend to follow this Anthropic model of AI agents, which is essentially like an LLM with a loop, an LLM in a loop that is making two calls, doing retrieval and reading and writing to memory. Yeah, so the interesting thing about AI agents is that one particular kind of AI agents has found like product market fit, and that's coding AI agents. And as you're probably familiar with all these logos, Cloud Code, Bolt, Lovable. And the interesting thing about all of them is that they all need sandboxes. And they need sandboxes because you need to run untrusted code. And there are different ways for you to run untrusted code. One, you can run it on your bare machine, but as we all know, on arbitrary code on your machine is probably not the greatest idea. So because of some attacks that you could encounter, like prompt injection vulnerabilities, supply chain attacks, malicious code generation. I mean, the AI agent could be generating any kind of code you're not super sure. And that's why we have the human in the loop thing. And also workspace pollution, right? So sometimes you just don't want it to generate code within your workspace. You want your workspace clean. And these are the reasons why we need sandboxes. So one of the things you could try is you could try and run it in containers. But containers have their limitation. So the thing about containers is that they run on your host kernel. That is, they run directly on your host kernel. You're just creating these C groups and namespaces to prevent, to kind of like create a sandbox around the applications that you're running and to give them a new namespace. But the problem with this idea is that any vulnerability within the Docker engine itself can just leak into the host operating system. So yeah, and that brings us to a new way. I mean, it's not new, but it's recent. So MicroVMs are a different way, and it was kind of championed by Amazon with their Firecracker technology. So Amazon, essentially what they've done is they stripped down a typical traditional VM and they made it very, very, very lean. So essentially they make the guest OS parts very lean. And yeah, so the difference between a container and a MicroVM here is that the MicroVM actually, the app is running within a virtual environment, a virtual machine, I mean, and it has hardware level isolation. So the app cannot escape into, I mean, cannot is a, but yeah, it's harder for the app to just escape into the host operating system because it has this hypervisor in between, and that's what provides the hardware level isolation. And it also comes with its own guest kernel. And yeah, so that's the cool thing about MicroVMs. And so why am I talking about this? And I'm talking about this because I created MicroSandbox recently. And MicroSandbox is meant to make this entire process easy. So typically most developers are they're more like used to like container type workflow. And MicroSandbox is supposed to bring like the same kind of experience that you get from things like Docker to MicroVMs as well. So it's supposed to make creating VMs actually easier. It's still a work in progress, but it's still very, very early. So what does MicroSandbox actually provide on top of like the underlying VMM? So we use Keyron VMM, and this is like Firecracker. You can imagine it as Firecracker actually. And Keyron creates the actual MicroVM. So MicroSandbox just builds on top of that and provides like image management, orchestration, overlay FS, because typically there's no overlay FS implementation for macOS. There is one for Linux, but there's none for macOS. So MicroSandbox actually implements that. And the interesting thing here is that the same overlay FS implementation is actually the same with the one that we offer on Linux. So what is overlay FS actually? Overlay FS is just a file system that abstracts the underlying host file system. It essentially creates a new file system for you to work with in your VM. And then we have the state management and then things like MCP support. So yeah, that's it about MicroVM. So I'm going to get into the demo of MicroSandbox.
This looks really cool, Stephen. I'm excited to see the demo. How long have you been working on this?
So I've been working on it since for like 8 months now, since October around October. That's when I started. Yeah, you could install like MicroSandbox from get.microsandbox.dev, but I've already done that, so I'm not going to do that.
Oh,
Stephen, we're still seeing the demo slides, not your window.
Wait, what? Okay.
Switch screens.
Okay, let me try.
Yeah, maybe share the whole desktop. Yeah.
Let me know when you get it up.
Okay, trying again.
You're probably loving this. He always gets such a kick out of these little micro virtualization things.
Okay. Send it. How about now? Can you see my terminal?
There it is. You're live.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's easy to install MicroSandbox, but
Wait, so
yeah.
we see like ChatGPT. Just make sure that we're seeing that screen or whatever. So, do you have a terminal open?
Sorry, I did not get what you said now.
Oh, I was saying that we see your desktop, like you have ChatGPT open and YouTube. Is that the?
Oh no, that's not it.
Wrong screen.
Gosh, I've lost him. He's totally gone.
Oh no.
Yeah, like not just his screen, but he's gone.
Yeah, he might have closed the browser because that has StreamYard in it.
Closed the browser, which has StreamYard in it. Oh, funny.
Yeah.
What do you think? You want a live demo of his product?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll come back in a second. Yeah.
You're back. We lost you, man.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Again.
Try one more.
I think it should be. Yeah, it should be correct now.
Perfect.
is.
Okay, yeah. Now we see a
This is right.
Cool.
We'll just edit that out in post. Don't worry.
we do zero editing.
Yeah. Cool. So you can actually just once you've installed a micro sandbox, you have this MSB thing, MSB command you can work with, and there are many things that you can do. But I think the most important one here, in relations to AI agents, is that you can start a server, and what the server does essentially is to create a server that you can send your code to, and the server is going to take the code and run it in a sandbox. Yeah, so that's what I mean. By the name, you kind of get what it does. So I've already set up I've already set up like the tool in Cloud, and you can sort of see like the tools that are available to Micro Sandbox. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you start Micro Sandbox, it itself it can be exposed as an MCP server. So then you can just directly interact with the sandboxes with AI.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a way for me to check here. The connectors, manage connectors. Yeah. Okay. I thought I would see the setting there, but it's not there. Anyway, but it's connected right now. So I had to add it to the Cloud config, and it looks like this. So this is the entry I added. So apparently you cannot. There's no easy way to add a remote MCP server right now, and MSB server is a remote MCP server. At least I've not been able to get it to work. So if you can just add this entry to your Cloud config, yeah, and you should be ready to get started. So what I'm going to do now is to get to write to create a website. And yeah, so it's going to start a simple server, a simple static file server at port 6060, and this might take a while.
Stephen, we're getting a little bit of that feedback from your loop. Do you want to mute your line for just a second and bring it?
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, that fixed it. We just mute and unmute.
Okay, so what this essentially does is it's like the AI agent, I mean, Claude in this case, just goes on to start the sandbox. It defines like the kind of sandbox it wants, and it uses this image. And because I've mentioned that I want a node server, so it's creating a node server sandbox, and it's exposing the ports because I already mentioned it here. And I expect this to actually go on and set up a node server. Oh my God, this is slow. But yeah, this might take a while.
So it's actually starting it's starting up the sandbox. It's writing the code into the sandbox, and eventually it's going to run this just arbitrary code.
Yeah, that's what's going to do.
So basically, so I'm kind of following this from a non-developer perspective. This is running a local VM on my machine that it's fully isolated from my local environment where I can
Yeah, exactly.
things, but also get all the power of a VM. I could run,
Exactly.
a separate operating system that I can do anything to as an MCP that I can engage with.
Yeah, pretty much. It creates the sandbox. It creates a fully isolated micro VM for you that you can pretty much do whatever without worrying about the consequences, I guess. That's what it does.
Very cool, man. This is really cool.
Sorry, can you mute again just for a second? Just because it keeps getting the feedback thing. So, can you show? So what's really interesting with this project? So, because can you show like quickly the Python API you have for this too? There's a Python API binding that I saw.
Are you referring to like the SDK?
Yeah. So then, like, you can just say like, run code type thing.
Okay. So I don't have that.
I don't need you to demo it. I was just saying, like, you just pulled up your docs just to show it. Okay. You don't need to demo it. I realize that's too much. I wanted to just kind of clarify, like, just for Shannon, or a little slightly less, like, kind of what you can do with this, because this is a very cool primitive that so like, just scroll up. So here you can see. So what you can do with this is you can write very simple, like Python, or I think you have other SDK ones where it's like. So there's kind of two approaches that you can do with these micro sandboxes. Is you can create an MCP server, or it is an MCP server, and AI can talk directly to it. Or instead, what you can do is write your own like MCP server or tool or whatever that calls this, like, just through this SDK. And so in this example here, like, you're just creating a Python sandbox and you give it some Python code, and then it just goes and executes that code. But like, what's happening under the hood is it's launching a full VM with a full environment. So because it's a very common thing where it's like, because we see this where it's like, if we give AI agents the ability to dynamically create and execute code, they can do a lot more. They can do a lot more computations and stuff like that. But the problem is how much access do you give them? So there's projects like, I think Pyode, I think that might be one of them, where it's like you can do Python, which translates to WebAssembly. And so people are doing that today. But the problem is it's extremely limiting what it can do. So the cool thing about this is this gives you the full functionality of, like, you can run any tool, anything that like the operating system can support, but it's completely secured. So like the ability, if you can take Micro Sandbox and you can, so you can create more tools where it's like, for like anything where it's like you just want to give AI the ability to just arbitrarily generate and run stuff or install things, like, because like one of the cool things that we found is like AI works extremely well if you just give it the CLI, and it will like apt-get install and it will do all of this stuff. But of course, like, you don't know what it's going to do. So like, you want to put it into a sandbox. So like with Micro Sandbox, it just makes creating these things so easy, and they're very lightweight too, such that like you could create your own MCP server that's doing all this fancy stuff pretty easily. It just kind of made this whole kind of secure execution just seamless and simple. And so just want to.
That's essentially the plan. The plan was to kind of allow, like, if you're not to allow like a programmatic way of accessing the micro VM itself, or to have like a server, like an MCP server just set up if you're not interested in writing the code yourself. You can just like set up the server. And actually, I was already working on something like DXT for Micro Sandbox, but I couldn't get it to work in time. But yeah, the point is to be able to drag this DXT, Micro Sandbox DXT, into your Claude desktop app, and just have like Micro Sandbox a sandboxing access.
Yeah, because I'd love to see like you know, like a DXT, like a tool that like just, you know, gives me basically like a virtual Linux machine, and I can just start letting it just do, you know, I mean, that's exactly what this is doing. So I just think it's like an amazing, it's a highly technical thing that you've done. It's pretty low level, but for people who understand like the complexities of, you know, generating and running untrusted stuff,
Yeah.
this solves it in a really pretty simple way, and it's very secure and it's fast. It's like secure, fast, and there's very little. It's like you can kind of do everything, as opposed to like WebAssembly, which people seem to like a lot, comes with a lot of caveats.
Yeah, this is cool. Actually, yeah, I get it.
This was the end result of what Claude finally created. Was this project here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I like this because I mean, just imagine testing. Like even when you're working and you're having, you know, you're working with Claude Code and stuff, you want to start testing local apps, things like that. Being able to run a micro VM there, you know, fully isolated without it, like I think you're going to get way better results because it's actually going to do packaging and testing way better than I think it's done in the past. This was awesome, guys. I know we're out of time. I want to thank you, Stephen, for coming and sharing this with us. Very cool. Congratulations on the company and it's Zerocore AI. That's the name of the company.
Yeah.
Love it, and we'd love to have you back, man. As you guys sort of move towards products, people can find this all of this stuff at MicroVM. What's the web URL again?
Microsandbox. Sorry, just yeah. It's
.com?
just the GitHub projects right now. For now.
If you just search for Micro Sandbox on GitHub, I think you'll find it there.
We'll put it in the links. We'll put it in the links below. Super cool work, buddy. Darren, anything else?
Oh no, I think we're out. But yeah, I'm curious to see where you go with this. I'd love to see you know, kind of people pick this up and see what they can do with it. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Stephen. Have a great day. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us for a longer than usual stream, and hopefully it was useful. We'll be back next week, and look forward to talking to you there. Come see us in London. This is super exciting. I'm really excited about the MCP Summit in London. We just announced it's going to be really fun and really awesome. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you there in October. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.